Okay. Thank you, Pablo, for that. Anyone from DA, the Department of Agriculture, who wants to raise concerns, maybe ask questions? Is Yusek Asis here? I think I saw his name a while ago.
Yusuf Asis is in another meeting,
All
so
right.
I was
As
asked to be, yeah, to be here. But the DA National Rice Program is also here, so maybe they can also provide inputs to the discussion. Actually, we know how important for us now. We know how important RCEF the fund is as. And that's the reason why we're also requesting for an extension for another 6 years. And right now, I know that DA is implementing the Masagana Rice Industry Development Program, and we are happy to also note that, as mentioned by Animesh, it's really a very good plan. Maybe we just have to implement, DA must just have to implement it properly. But I think going back to the amendment to the RTL, maybe the controversial issues there is the reinstatement of the NFA's function. Um, to import, but I believe the purpose is targeted intervention. So it's not really just to import and then to for them to sell, but there are specific conditions in the draft amendment or in the House bill version, the version in Congress. So it's targeted and it will actually require for the president to authorize it. So, and it's the idea of that is because we want in cases where there is really unreasonable rise of rice price. I think we have no choice but to really help the vulnerable sector of the society. So, and it's for a very limited period. Um, and we should also understand that there are other issues, there are other factors, the price manipulation, so there's profiteering, there's hoarding of price. So it's not really an ideal situation always where, if the price of rice is high because there's this global increase in the global price. We should also consider that there are factors, unreasonable increase because of manipulation. So we just provide there. I mean, the proposal in the House is that there is this provision where for a limited period and targeted intervention, the government can do that to stabilize the price. I think that and the proposal is for, I think, NFA to do the importation or to do the buffer stocking, but the selling, no, the selling is going to be I think at the Kadiwa centers. And that will be sold only in areas where the price is really high. Now, I think that's as for the RCEP, we know that I think we all agree that it's really important, and that maybe the issues with the NFA, etc. Is more and the buffer stocking, and also with respect to the PITC, I don't. This is just my take on that. I think because the infra to stock is really with NFA, the infrastructure, the warehouses. So if other government agency will do the importation and stock buffer stocking, I think it's a lot more difficult, or it's difficult if unless except because NFA has all the resources, the infrastructure, the warehouse, all over the Philippines. So maybe that's the reason why it's difficult to use the PITC channel. So maybe the national rice you can also say something if they want to say something. Thank you, Yusek.
Thank you, Asipas. Maybe if Neda, do you have any concerns or questions?
Good morning, Yusek Dominic. This is Despo from the Agri Natural Resources and Environment staff. Could you hear me clearly po?
Yes, yes.
Just going back to Animesh presentation, thank you very much. Just two questions regarding first on the RCEF and second regarding the one also asked by Yusek Dominic earlier on rice importation by the government. So you mentioned earlier that the key really in improving productivity is in terms of the total factor productivity, which is essentially innovation and perhaps enhanced use of machineries and equipment. And um, we note that the current design of the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund really followed that framework. In fact, 50% of the 10 billion RCEF is allocated for mechanization. However, as you mentioned, there were challenges in the implementation, and in fact, that component, that mechanization component, had the lowest utilization rate and encountered several implementation challenges, particularly that the machineries distributed were not really suitable for the local conditions. And secondly, there were delays in the distribution of such machinery. So in in essence, the use of such machineries and equipment was really not maximized to the point that we were able to significantly increase productivity. Although we noted some increase in productivity, but perhaps not much as we would have expected before uh, that intervention. So the question really is what to do with that with that scenario since I think as designed the RCEF wanted to really put forward that framework of improving productivity through mechanization and providing inputs through the seed component which got 30% of the 10 billion, and there's also credit and extension component. So what we were thinking now is to provide more flexibility in giving those assistance to the rice farmers, perhaps through what you mentioned earlier, the coupled uh, cash transfers. But I would like to know if in your assessment, uh, is there still a need to have those components retained under the amended or extended RCEP? For example, there will still be mechanization, seeds, extension and credit, but perhaps a more flexible percentage allocation based on their distribution or perhaps implementation concerns. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on that matter. And another related thing is we know that RCEP gets 10 billion so far out of the tariff revenues, but we also have another rice program which has an allocation of around 30 billion pesos. So I would also like to know your thoughts regarding the uh, interface of those programs, which both cater to rice farmers. And then on the rice importation as part of stabilization of prices, the OECD noted before in 2017 that government price stabilization through, for example, buffer stocking really has ineffective uh, it becomes ineffective since first is there's a weak capacity to intervene at the right time, and second it's very costly and may crowd out private sector investments in the storage market. And the third one is there's really lack of clarity in the buffer stocking policy. So this is also in relation to the discussion earlier on the government importation. So what really are your thoughts on when should really the government intervene? Should it be limited just only when extremely necessary, when prices are very high? Or is it also a value that the government has that sort of a regular stabilization policy just to keep prices low? Thank you.
You, may I, Bisek Domini, may I respond?
Yes, of course, Animesh,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you for putting these questions. These are really very thoughtful questions, and these need a very long discussion, and I mean it very respectfully, because you've put your finger on several very important things. When it comes to the RCEF and the issues you were talking about, I think at the core of what you're talking about is really what we all know, that between an idea and its translation, there can be so many things that can go right or wrong. And we need to keep an eye on that. So at a conceptual level, that's the level at the 30,000 feet level, if you like, in the presentation. Conceptually, RCEF is a very strong thing. It's even the name, Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. It's a fund to enhance competitiveness. And our analysis showed that that's exactly what the country needs because it's a high cost producer, low productivity, low PFP, etc. So at one idea is actually a very good idea. And just to reflect back on you, uh, I've been working in other countries in the region, and this associated with it. You won't believe the number of times we have been discussing this in other countries with other policymakers who are all very keen to know about it and know more about it. So conceptually, it is the right thing because we do need to enhance competitiveness, enhance productivity. Now comes the detail of it. And it's easy, of course, to be critical, but I think what really goes on is we need to keep fine-tuning the design. That's number one. We need to actively look for what has been working because it is also the case that this is not a unique problem that has to be cracked here. Globally, the challenge is the same, and successful examples are there, including from projects that the World Bank has been doing. We've been doing successful projects in Vietnam, in Philippines, in Indonesia, and other countries. So there's a lot of learning around. We just need to bring that flexibly in. In general, providing very legislated category, not legislated, but very determinative categories may not be the best way to do productivity because productivity is about flexibility, flexibility of input mix, technology, capacity, skills. And so just providing a machinery grant when the other things around it may not be working, you can have an island investment or things are not joined up, etc. So there may be ways to bring the learnings along. And that's why I thought, at least at a casual glance, that the MRIDP with its 5-year horizon provides maybe the scope to bring this learning and to work with also the good lessons we have. So I think the short answer to what I'm sure is a very important and long discussion is that the design and the modalities of the program will need to be thought through, will need to remain flexible and responsive to the evidence from implementation. It would be difficult to think of 3 or 4 categories and say, well, that fixes our problem, because TFP is about behavior change. TFP is about incentives. It's about technology, and it's about responding to the market and environmental sustainability, as Paul was saying. It may sound like a long list, but it is happening in places. It is happening, as I said, even in our World Bank project. So it is technically feasible. It is economically feasible, viable, and we just need to bring that into our design element. So that would be my sense on the RCF. question and the other program design. And in a sense, in, in spirit, a similar response to, again, the very weighty issues that you raise about importation. At one level, having a flexible, open trade regime is obviously very helpful because global shocks are getting big, they're getting correlated, national country systems are getting overwhelmed, etc. Now, exactly how detailed, who does what, that's where we have to keep it flexible, depend on the special institutional conditions, special regulations. So those will have to be factored in. A priori answers may not be so. Yeah, what I'm saying is that again, we have excellent. Oh, and one other thought on import management, which perhaps we should bring in, is ultimately stabilizing prices is a matter of not dealing with one kind of shock, but a multiple different shocks, weather shocks, demand shocks, market shocks. So you have multiple shocks with these shocks. Sometimes if you have a consumption shock, targeted social protection support or targeted food sensitive social protection support than interfering with market prices. So one needs to also develop a strategy that has a better understanding of the different kinds of shocks one may end up dealing with and which, whether through import, whether through buffering, whether through income support, whether through better logistics, but more storage and warehousing in the private sector, etc. So there may be different ways to sort of strengthen the resilience and the price stabilization function that we have ongoing.
All
Thanks.
right, thanks, Des. I think we're running a little bit out of time already. If DBM and TMS and maybe Neda have other questions in DA, maybe what we'll do is we'll consolidate and then we'll send it to you. But before we end, maybe I think one of the things we've been talking about agricultural productivity and revision of RTL. Do you have recommendations on any short-term measures? Because this issue is actually upon us already and has been in the past few months. We've talked about cash assistance, for example, for consumers. I think there are initiatives in place for that. Possibly well, I'm not so sure how importation would work right now without that shift from moving it from TTIC to DA unless we do coordinate with TTIC. But do you think that given higher prices, temporarily lowering tariffs would also benefit, given that prices are high everywhere also?
Thank you. So this is more, of course, in the informal conversation mode. So these are opinions and we can visit them more rigorously later. But I would definitely imagine that being more flexible with tariffs in a market sensitive way is definitely a good use of the variable tariff regime. Being more flexible with importation is obviously helps with better buffer stock buildup at more competitive prices. But in the second thing, one must be clear that this has to be rule-based. It has to be transparent engagement. The way one agency imports should not disadvantage private sector players. One should be also careful about non-tariff and other considerations being used to restrict import from others or market dominating practices. So in general, open, competitive, robust protocols for importation should definitely help with the price management and bringing the price level down, because we saw that in the first graph. After the RTL is imposed, the price trended down with the tariffs and imports. So yeah, that would be, and on RCEF, I think that overall RTL and RCEF are positioning us to address long-term structural changes in agriculture, to move it in the direction of competitiveness, productivity, which is needed for income growth, for food security, and for sustainability. So I would very much hope that uh, it stays and we keep improving on the design and implementation modalities. It's always an unfinished work, but I would very much hope that that's the thrust of what I would like to think in the long term, that RTL and RCF together do provide an opportunity to catalyze change.
All right. Okay. And thank you for the rest of the team. I think maybe we'll sort of gather our thoughts and then we'll get back to you on maybe the next ways of move forward. Whether it's another discussion, which could actually be very useful given our limited time right now. There is, as mentioned a while ago, there is an interagency group working on this. So we are also working together. So if everyone could send their questions to who's leading the interagency group, DOF or NEDA? NEDA, to NEDA please, to the group of DES, and then maybe we'll coordinate with you on additional questions or if we need additional information. And then there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I know it's different times all over the world, but we do appreciate this, especially given the way that the Congress has been moving with RTF. Thank you again, Animesh and team. Thank you, rest of the government agencies.
Thank you. On behalf of the bank and its team, Yusek Dominique, thank you, to all the colleagues for bringing us into this conversation and giving us this opportunity to present as well. We look forward to working with you.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.